For decades, fans of both Marie Osmond and Andy Gibb have wondered what really happened between the two young stars whose connection lit up the entertainment world. Their chemistry was undeniable, their bond was immediate, and their friendship captured the hearts of millions. Yet, behind the smiles, interviews, and unforgettable performances, there were moments that the public never saw, moments filled with emotion, struggle, hope, and heartbreak. For years, Marie remained respectful and private about her memories of Andy, choosing silence over speculation. She never wanted to overshadow his legacy or reopen the painful chapters of his life. But now, at 66, she is speaking more openly than ever before. And what she reveals is far more emotional than anyone expected. Marie describes Andy not just as a gifted performer, but as a gentle soul who carried more weight on his shoulders than people realized. She shares details about their time together, moments of laughter, moments of worry, and conversations that stayed with her long after they parted ways. She explains how she tried to help him, why their connection was so meaningful, and the truth behind the stories fans have debated for decades. Her words are not dramatic or sensational, they are heartfelt, honest, and filled with compassion for a friend she never forgot. And as she reflects on their bond all these years later, the truth she finally shares brings both clarity and heartbreak. This is the emotional story Marie Osmond has held close to her heart until now. When Marie Osmond first met Andy Gibb, she felt an instant sense of warmth that made him impossible to forget. At the time, both were surrounded by bright lights, constant cameras, and the non-stop pace of television and music fame. Yet despite the noise of the entertainment world around them, their first meeting felt strangely quiet, almost calm. Andy walked in with a soft smile that made everyone relax, and Marie noticed immediately that he carried a gentle charm unlike anyone she had met. What began as a simple introduction soon became the start of a connection that surprised both of them. They were close in age, both rising stars, and both learning how to navigate a world where every expression, every step, and every decision was examined by the public. Marie quickly realized that Andy had an energy that drew people in, not because he tried to impress them, but because he genuinely cared about making others feel comfortable. He asked questions, listened closely, and offered compliments without expecting anything in return. It was rare in an industry where conversations often felt rushed and shallow. Over time, they began spending more moments together backstage, during rehearsals, and between interviews. They shared quiet conversations that most people never knew about. Conversations about work pressure, personal doubts, and the dream of a life where they could breathe without the weight of expectations. Marie admired Andy's talent, but it was his vulnerability that reached her heart. He spoke with honesty about the challenges he faced, the emotional strain of constantly performing, and the fear of disappointing the people who believed in him. Marie understood those feelings better than anyone. She had grown up in the public eye and knew exactly how difficult it could be to manage fame. While trying to stay grounded, she often felt protective of Andy, sensing that beneath his sweet nature was a young man who needed support, understanding, and someone who wouldn't judge him for the moments when he felt overwhelmed. Their bond was never about romance or attention. It was about two people finding comfort in the middle of a storm. As the months passed, Marie saw both the bright and shadowed sides of Andy's life. She admired the way he lit up a room with his personality, his humor, and his remarkable gift for connecting with audiences. But she also noticed the quiet spells when he grew distant, when his eyes revealed a worry he tried hard to hide. These were the moments when Marie would sit with him, offering reassurance without pressure. She wanted him to know he wasn't alone, even when the world seemed to expect perfection. Behind the scenes, the entertainment schedule took a toll on Andy. The demands placed on him were far heavier than most fans realized. He was young, still figuring out who he was, yet already expected to carry himself like a seasoned professional. The pressure pushed him into emotional exhaustion at times, and Marie was often one of the few who sensed when he needed a friend who truly understood. Their friendship continued to grow in a natural, effortless way. They joked, talked about their dreams, and supported each other's work. And he often told Marie that her kindness helped him feel grounded during difficult days. Marie, in return, appreciated his sincerity and the genuine respect he showed her. She later explained that Andy had a softness that made him unforgettable, a softness most people never truly saw. But Marie also sensed that Andy was fighting an internal battle, one he rarely expressed out loud. She wished she could protect him from the storms that were forming around him, storms that would later become heartbreakingly clear. Still, despite knowing how fragile he could be, she cherished every moment of their friendship. It became one of the most meaningful connections of her early career, shaping the way she remembered Andy for the rest of her life and in the years that followed. The truth about their bond, what she saw, what she knew, and what she feared would stay with her long after the world changed around them. As Marie and Andy grew closer, she began to notice the subtle shifts in his behavior, small signs that something heavier was weighing on him. And he was still charming, still warm, still capable of lighting up a room with a single smile. But there were days when that brightness dimmed. Marie sensed early on that the pressures surrounding him were becoming too much. Though Andy rarely admitted it, he didn't want to appear weak, especially not to someone he admired. But Marie could see the truth behind his cheerful front, and he had always been seen as the carefree youngest brother of a famous family, the talented newcomer whose voice could melt an audience. But with that talent came an intense level of expectation. The industry wanted hit after hit. The media wanted headlines. Fans wanted perfection. And Andy, trying to meet all of those demands at once, carried the weight quietly and alone. Marie remembered seeing him backstage after a long day of rehearsals. He sat off to the side, shoulders slightly slumped, his expression distant. When she asked if he was all right, he offered a gentle smile and said he was just tired. But Marie sensed that his exhaustion wasn't simply physical. It was emotional, a deep fatigue that came from being pulled in too many directions at once. She tried to encourage him, reminding him that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But Andy often brushed his own feelings aside, insisting he was fine. What troubled Marie the most was Andy's habit of blaming himself for even the smallest setbacks. If a performance didn't go perfectly, he took it personally. If he stumbled during rehearsals, he apologized repeatedly. He had a way of carrying guilt that didn't belong to him, a tendency to believe he wasn't giving enough even when he was giving everything. Marie found herself reassuring him time after time, telling him that one mistake didn't erase his talent or his worth. But the doubts inside him seemed stronger than any comfort she could offer. Marie also noticed how isolated Andy sometimes felt in the middle of a crowded room. People surrounded him constantly, fans, managers, producers, reporters, but very few truly listened. Marie listened, but listening only went so far. She couldn't control the demands of the industry, nor could she shield him from the emotional toll that came with constantly trying to live up to expectations. There were moments when Andy opened up more honestly. He admitted that he felt overwhelmed, that he feared disappointing people, that he sometimes questioned whether he deserved the success he had achieved. Marie assured him that his talent was real, that his heart was genuine, and that he had earned every bit of admiration he received. But Andy struggled to believe it. He carried insecurities that had been growing since childhood, insecurities that fame only intensified. Marie wished she could do more. She wished she could take away the anxiety that shadowed his happiest moments. But she also understood the limits of friendship. No matter how much she cared, she couldn't fix the things Andy struggled with internally. She could support him, encourage him, and remind him of his worth. But she couldn't fight the battles he kept hidden deep inside. One particular memory stayed with Marie for years. Late one evening after taping a show, she and Andy sat together talking quietly. Andy admitted he often felt like he didn't belong, like he wasn't strong enough to handle everything expected of him. Marie held his hand gently and told him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was humanity. But Andy only smiled sadly, as though he didn't fully believe the words. Looking back, Marie realized how much Andy was trying to hold himself together, while the world continued to push him forward. She saw the pressure, the exhaustion, the uncertainty, and she saw a young man doing his best to stay hopeful, even while his confidence cracked beneath the surface. Marie would later say that she didn't just care about Andy. She worried about him. She feared for the moments when she wasn't there to remind him that he mattered. And though she did everything she could to support him, she knew she couldn't stop the challenges closing in around him. What she didn't know then was how quickly everything would change, and how deeply those changes would affect her for years to come. As time went on, Marie began to realize that Andy's emotional strain was becoming harder for him to hide. His bright energy still appeared on stage, but behind the scenes, the cracks in his confidence were beginning to show more clearly. Marie often found herself watching him with growing concern, sensing that the challenges he carried were starting to overwhelm him in ways he couldn't easily control. She tried to stay close, offering quiet encouragement whenever she could, but she also knew that Andy was slipping into a place where reassurance alone might not be enough. Their schedules continued to bring them together frequently, and each meeting revealed a new layer of the burden Andy was carrying. Marie remembered one particular day when Andy arrived late to a rehearsal, breathless and visibly flustered. He apologized repeatedly, explaining that he had been caught up in a moment of panic, a feeling he didn't know how to shake. Marie tried to comfort him, but he avoided eye contact, too ashamed to admit how overwhelmed he felt. Even then, she sensed that something was shifting, that Andy was beginning to lose the ability to balance his inner emotions with the outer expectations placed on him. At one point, the pressure became so intense that Andy stepped back from a project unexpectedly. The decision surprised many people, but Marie understood it immediately. She knew he needed space, time, and someone who could support him without judgment. She reached out privately, offering a place where he could speak openly. But Andy struggled to fully express himself. He didn't want to burden her. He didn't want anyone to think he was failing. He simply said he needed a break, though Marie sensed his break was less about rest and more about emotional survival. Marie later revealed that this was the moment she realized the depth of Andy's struggles. He had always carried his stress quietly, but now the weight was too heavy to hide. She tried to encourage him to seek support from people who could guide him, but Andy's instinct was to withdraw. He often told her he didn't want to disappoint anyone, that admitting he needed help felt like a sign of weakness. Marie disagreed, but she couldn't change the way he viewed himself. Their final emotional conversation remains one of the most meaningful moments of Marie's early career. Andy had reached out unexpectedly late one evening. His voice was soft, tired, and vulnerable. He confessed that he felt lost and didn't know how to pull himself back to stability. Marie listened closely, giving him space to express what he had been holding inside for so long. She told him she cared, that he wasn't alone, and that stepping away from pressure was not a sign of failure. For the first time, Andy let the truth spill out. He was scared. Scared of falling behind. Scared of not living up to expectations. Scared of losing himself. Marie tried to reassure him, holding onto every word, hoping he would find strength in their conversation. She reminded him of his extraordinary talent, his kindness, and the way people lit up around him. She told him he mattered far beyond the stage lights, and he thanked her softly, saying she was one of the few people who made him feel understood. But even in his gratitude, Marie heard a tone of uncertainty, as though he wasn't sure he deserved the comfort she offered. That night stayed with her for decades. It was the moment she realized the emotional battle Andy was fighting was more serious than she had imagined. She wished she could have stayed with him longer, guiding him through every moment of doubt. But she also knew that life was pulling them in different directions. Their paths continued to cross afterward, but Marie felt a growing worry each time she saw him. Andy's smile still warmed a room, but behind it, she sensed a deep, lingering sadness. Looking back, Marie often spoke about how that conversation marked a turning point not only for Andy, but for her as well. It changed the way she saw fame, pressure, and the unseen battles carried by the people who seemed the brightest on the surface. It was a moment she would never forget, a moment that shaped the truth she now shares about Andy Gibb all these years later. As Marie Osmond continued to reflect on her bond with Andy Gibb, she also confronted the emotional weight that came with remembering someone whose presence still lingered so strongly. Even decades later, she admitted that certain melodies, certain places, and certain quiet moments had the power to bring him back into focus. It wasn't sorrow that followed her, at least not anymore, but a gentle ache that came from knowing a bright life had flickered out far too soon. She often spoke about him with a mix of care and steadiness, wanting people to see the full person she knew rather than just the difficult headlines attached to his name. To Marie, Andy was someone who carried joy wherever he went, even during the times when life felt heavier for him than anyone realized. As she grew older and matured as an artist, Marie became more aware of the quiet struggles many entertainers faced while trying to maintain an image of perfection. In several conversations, she mentioned how Andy sometimes felt overwhelmed by expectations placed on him at such a young age. She did not reveal private details, but she acknowledged that the rapid pace of fame brought pressures he didn't always know how to navigate. These reflections weren't meant to cast shadows on his memory, but to remind people that behind every spotlight stood a human being trying their best. Marie believed that sharing this perspective honored Andy in a way that allowed fans to understand him with empathy instead of judgment. Through the years, Marie also found comfort in the memories of the lighter moments. They shared moments away from the cameras, away from crowds, where they could simply be young performers enjoying the company of someone who understood the whirlwind of the entertainment world. She told stories about laughter between rehearsals, long conversations about dreams and fears, and the kind of friendship that didn't need grand gestures to be meaningful. Those recollections, she said, helped her keep Andy's memory alive in a way that was warm and respectful. And anytime fans asked her about him, she tried to answer with the same warmth, because she knew how much he meant to people. Despite the years that passed, Marie never distanced herself from speaking about Andy. Instead, she embraced the responsibility of honoring him honestly. She explained that silence often creates confusion, while truth brings clarity. Her intention was never to revisit pain, but to ensure that Andy's legacy was preserved with care. She wanted fans to remember his kindness, his humor, his talent, and the gentle spirit she knew so well. Every time she spoke on the subject, she made sure the focus stayed on the good he brought into the world. If there was one message she wanted to keep alive, it was that Andy deserved to be remembered for the joy he gave rather than the challenges he faced. Marie also reflected on how Andy's journey had shaped her own life perspective. She learned the importance of paying attention to those around her, listening deeply, and offering support even when someone appeared to be doing fine on the surface. She often encouraged younger artists to prioritize their well-being and to reach out when life felt difficult. While she never claimed to have all the answers, she understood that kindness, presence, and openness could make a tremendous difference. In her heart, carrying forward that lesson became one of the ways she honored Andy's memory. In recent years, Marie's reflections on Andy have taken on an even more thoughtful tone. She spoke about how time has a way of revealing meaning behind past events, helping people understand their experiences with a softness that wasn't possible in earlier years. She expressed gratitude for having known Andy during such a pivotal moment in both of their lives. And while the world sometimes focuses on the difficult chapters of his story, Marie continued encouraging fans to see the full picture: the talent, the charm, the sincerity, and the remarkable impact he made despite his short time in the spotlight. Marie's final thoughts on Andy Gibb weren't about grief, but about remembrance, growth, and appreciation. She believed that keeping his memory alive meant sharing the best parts of his journey and celebrating the light he brought into the lives of those who knew him. And in doing so, she ensured that Andy Gibb's story remained one of heart, hope, and timeless influence.